There was an idea I was kind of turning over in the back of my head this week when I was thinking about what I might want to talk about. And one thing I think that was kind of floating around was the idea of how the cult rooks you in and how it gets a grip on you. And I see a lot of ex-members, myself included, that have a tendency to want to kick ourselves over the fact of how could I have been so naive? How did I get sucked into all of this? Why did I fall for it? I've done this myself many times since leaving, the cult religion of AA. I've said to myself, well, what seems to be so obvious to me now, what seems to be so blatantly obvious, how in the world was that ever appealing to me? How did that ever make any logical sense to me? Why did I, swallow it? And it got me to thinking back to when I was first exposed to it a very long time ago. Doesn't seem like a very long time ago. What was the line in the... it was a Stephen King film where he said it a very long time ago, but only if you measure it in terms of years. I kind of understand that now that I'm a lot older. But when I first got exposed to it, the treatment centers, the hospitals with the alcohol poisoning and the drug court situation and all the stuff that would happen to me later on, that had not taken place yet. It's funny, most of my really major problems with alcohol happened after I had been in AA for a number of years, which I could do an entire video on why I think AA makes binge drinking worse, and I think and why it makes relapses worse. In fact, I may touch on some of that here. But at the time I walked into my very first AA meeting, I think I've covered a little bit about it before in other videos, where I wasn't in any legal trouble. I wasn't in any legal hot water or anything like that. I didn't have any problems really with my place of employment at the time, although it was frayed and falling apart anyway. With me, I mean, it's kind of difficult to struggle through a workplace day when you're either drinking in the morning to stop the shakes, or your whole entire workday focuses on, oh my God, I can't wait to punch out on that clock so I can get a fucking drink and relieve some of this miserable pain that I've been dealing with all day long, kind of feeling. But there was a lot that was going bad in my life at the time. It wasn't a very pleasant time, it's funny. I look back on it now and I realize that drinking was kind of a cultivated coping mechanism that I developed over time. I think, when I was a teenager, there was this funny feeling in the back of my mind that it's Friday night, it's Saturday night, and you're supposed to be intoxicated. You're supposed to be trying to get messed up. Kind of reminds me of that old movie, Ever America, where the main character says, I used to judge how free a country is by how wasted you could get on a Saturday night, or something like that, or what kind of Saturday night they have. And I found out that's not entirely a good way to judge how free a nation is, because the Soviet Union has some really good Saturday nights in terms of getting intoxicated. So drinking, to me, looking back on it now, being able to reflect back on all of it, drinking was a coping mechanism for me. When things was miserable, I drank. Now, of course, to be honest, I drank when I was happy as well. I drank all the time before I entered AA, but drinking was a coping mechanism for me. It was how I dealt with stress. It was how I dealt with my ceaseless anxiety. It was how I dealt with OCD, believe it or not. Could do a video about that too, but anyway, when I first got there, there was kind of a depressed feeling that was going on with me, because there was this idea of, oh my God, it's come to this. I don't remember a whole lot about my very first AA meeting. I remember sitting in there, and they did have a newcomers meeting, and I remember a lot of people talking, and I remember identifying with a lot of these horror stories people were telling, and I remember being absolutely devastated, but at the same time, I was actually kind of excited. Well, at least these people understand what I'm going through. At least these people understand what it's like to have a drinking problem. At least these people, there was that very naive hopefulness that was there at that moment. It was like, well, finally, maybe I found a way out. Maybe finally I found a way to overcome what's going on with me, because I really wasn't happy with the way my life was going. I hadn't had all the legal problem that would come later. I hadn't had the DUIs that would come later. I didn't have the treatment centers that would come later. And of course, AA cult members watching this and say, oh, you know, you hadn't reached your bottom yet. That's all that was. And all that. I disagree with that, but I don't want to get sidetracked. But I remember kind of thinking to myself, well, you know, I haven't had any friendly relations with anybody in quite some time. I mean, you know, even my drinking buddies were saying, you know, you're drinking too much. You know, you need to think about cutting back on it and all that other kind of thing. So I hadn't actually had anybody accept me for forever. It felt like I didn't have nowhere to turn where I actually felt like I was accepted or a part of anything. It's funny now in my older age, I don't desire to be a part of anything. I don't desire to be accepted. You know, I'm me. Like the line from the comedian W.C. Fields, I'm kind of distrustful of any organization that would consider having me as a member. Is the way I look at the way I look at it now. But at the time, there was a feeling of, okay, I'm accepted for who I am here. I'm accepted for being a person that is what everybody around me was calling a worthless drunk. I was feeling accepted. I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to what was being said. I just knew that there was probably some magical cure here for what was going on with me. I actually was naive enough to believe what everybody was saying. And I think I look back on that, it's because I was so desperate for there to be a solution is the only reason that I didn't have my street smarts on. It's the only reason that I didn't have my cynical glasses on, you know, to use that metaphor. I was so desperate to believe that there was some cure for what was wrong with me, for this self-destructive cycle that I seemed to be trapped in, that was driving everybody away in my life, that was fucking up everything good. I was so desperate for there to be an actual answer to my problem that was going to actually magically wave that problem away that I don't think that I was trying to look at it with any critical eye, you know, like I would later on in life. Like I said, it makes me cringe to talk about this, but I kind of think it's important for people who leave AA and are saying, why did I get sucked into it? Why did I believe that shit? Why did I let those fucking assholes, you know, dictate how I felt and how I thought? And why did I let, you know, that kind of thing? I think the key answer there is I was so desperate for a cure that I just sort of didn't look at any warning signs in the early days. The thing I remember the most, and this is kind of where I wanted to go with the binge drinking becoming worse because of them and all this other kind of thing is, and again, got to put a cringe warning here, I would hear them read at the beginning of every meeting the first month that I was in there, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path, right? They would start every meeting out with that. Rarely have we seen a person fail. Whenever I would hear that, there was a part of me that was worried. Because, well, they're saying rarely have they seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed their path. But what if I'm one of those people that's going to fail? What if I'm one of those people that's going to fall? What if I'm one of those people that this don't work for? You know, there was a desperate part of me whenever I would hear these other people in the early days talking about what horrible drunks they were, what horrible criminals they were, and what horrible people they were, and how they were just living fucking miracles today, that I just desperately needed to believe that that was true. I desperately needed to believe that I was not going to be condemned to drinking myself to death for the rest of my life. I desperately needed that to be a reality. But that fear was there. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. And there was a part of me that would get terrified every time I would hear that at the beginning of every meeting. There was a part of me that was just clutching my wrist and thinking to myself, I sure in the fuck hope that it's not going to be me. I sure in the fuck hope that I can get my act together here. I really don't want to continue on this shitty downward spiral that I'm on, you know. And then they, of course, they throw in the little, those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to this simple program. It didn't occur to me right there and then to say, well, there's a caveat to this. Rarely have we seen a person fail. The caveat is it's your fault. But I didn't actually see that with a critical eye at the time. I thought, so in other words, if I half-ass this program, then I probably won't fail because it says those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves over. And then, of course, you know, they throw in another bullshit line about, you know, usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. And this is really cringeworthy again. I know I keep saying that every 2 seconds in this video, but I think it's important. But there was a part of me that said, well, I think I'm a pretty honest guy. I can be honest. I mean, if that's all that's required for me to give this problem up, yeah, I can do that, you know. And then, of course, they say they're not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. And I thought, well, I sure as fuck hope that's not true. I was hanging on to every line that was coming at me like it was, the sacred fucking holy grail here. Because I literally believed at that time, you got to remember, no social media, no Facebook, no YouTube, no blogs, no web pages telling you what a phony operation the whole fucking cult was. It was just this, The most I would ever find at that time is maybe a newspaper article somewhere that would say something like, AA doesn't work for everyone, but it's helped millions of people. And I thought, well, what if it don't work for me? What if I can't do this, And I remember, I think, like 3 weeks passed, and it was a Saturday night, and I was sitting in a meeting, and I said to myself, I feel like drinking. That terrified me, because like everyone else had already told me, this was the last house on the left. Well, the last house on the block, they call it, but you get what I'm talking about. Everybody told me that, this is it. If you can't do this, well, you just may not ever recover. You don't have the capacity to be honest. You may have been born that way. All that other crap was rolling around in my head, and I was thinking to myself, why the fuck am I feeling like drinking on a Saturday night? There's nothing bad happening to me here. There's nothing going on. I just feel like drinking. It was in the middle of the summer, I remember, and I was on my way home from the meeting, and there was a little shopping center that I had to pass in order to get to where I was staying at the time, and there was a liquor store and a gas station. They were all together in this one little place. I walked into the liquor store, and my heart was pumping like that. I felt adrenaline, and I felt like the worst person on the face of the earth for doing this, but I just really wanted to have a drink. I bought me a half pint. It was a half pint of Jim Beam, and I went into the gas station bathroom. By the way, I don't know if anybody else ever did this, but I used to love ducking in gas station bathrooms with little airplane bottles and turning them up real quickly, throw them in the garbage can, put paper towels on top of them. I don't know what the paper towels was for. It was like I was afraid somebody would come in the bathroom after me and see that thing and be like, "Ooh, the guy was in there drinking," or something. But anyway, I went in the bathroom. I took a couple of swallows off of it. I got really scared, and I almost poured it out, but then I just didn't want to do that, so I finished it. Nothing really happened, I drove on home, and nothing really happened. I caught kind of a decent buzz off of it, but it wasn't that decent of a buzz because there was this part of me that was filled with this tremendous terror, this tremendous phobia of, oh my God, I bet you anything I'm going to be one of those people. I'm going to be one of the ones that can't get it. I'm going to be one of the ones that's constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself. I'm going to be one of those unfortunates. I'm going to be one of those people that I hear about in these meetings that blow their brains out because they can't do this. Oh my God, I'm really a fucking failure. I'm a fucking loser. I'm going to die drunk. There's no way out for me. This was the last house on the block, and I fucking failed at it. Those were the thoughts that was running through my head. I got to say it one more time, even though I've already said it a couple of hundred times. It's very cringeworthy that I felt that way. But there was such a tremendous feeling of guilt that went with it. There was this tremendous feeling of horrible guilt that was just eating me up inside. And, I said to myself, well, you know what you got to do? You got to go back to a meeting. You got to get a white chip. You got to do all this. I'd never picked up a white chip before outside of my newcomers meeting. So I went to the meeting the following day, and I just sat in the back, and I didn't say anything. And a couple of people came up to me afterward, and they were like, really glad to see you keep coming. I'm really glad to see you keep coming. It's really good to see you keep coming. You're doing well. You're doing really well. You're doing good. Just keep doing what you're doing. You'll be fine. There was this eat-up, terrified feeling inside of me of, oh my God, I must be the worst human being on the face of the fucking earth. I didn't even tell these people the truth, and I snuck a drink. What kind of person am I? What kind of horrible person am I? And of course another relapse happened shortly after, and I could go on and on with this narrative, but I think you see, where I'm going with this. But I heard him say in meetings, we have successfully fucked up your drinking. Every time you drink, you'll think about us, which, by the way, that's not true at all. It just makes the binge drinking worse, in my opinion. But I was so convinced that I was one of the unfortunates because not only had I relapsed and lied about it. I didn't go pick up a white chip. I just didn't say anything. I was so convinced that I was some kind of horrible human being, that I was the worst of the worst, that I was the bottom of the barrel, that nobody could be as low as I was low. And I can't tell you how much guilt I was eaten up with at the time, because I told no one about that little, gas station bathroom trip. So there were people around me in my real life that thought I was going to AA and staying sober. They were like, you're doing great. You're doing great. I'm just proud of you for doing this. And there was this part of me. It's like, yeah, but I'm not doing great. I'm a fuck up. I'm a failure. And of course, when I came clean with everybody, it was just straight on attack mode. You're a liar. You're a failure. You're a piece of shit. We all knew it. We all know it. That kind of thing happened to me. Which is one of the reasons why people, I think, do lie about their relapses, because they know how they're going to be treated when they come clean about them. But I hung on to meetings in the early years. I hung on to meetings. I hung on every word those assholes were saying, those lying, phony, fake fucks that are just there to exploit newcomers, to feed their own egos, to coast on their power trips, accomplish nothing in life but being an AA old-timer with a fucking sobriety date. But I hung on to every word they were saying as though it was gospel truth, because I was so terrified that I was going to be one of the ones that was constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself. And it was funny, and how many people I would go to in the early days, and I'd be like, but I've relapsed. There's no hope for me, is there? There's no hope for me, is there? Looking back on it, these predatory assholes that I found out what kind of people they really are, probably were fucking making fun of me the whole entire time. I saw them make fun of people who were relapsers behind their backs. That was how I figured that part out. But I hung on to everything thinking, well, there's got to be a magical cure here. There's got to be some kind of way out here. There's got to be something that's going to ultimately save me from myself here. The whole entire time, it was almost like, I've used this example before about here. It's like the Wizard of fucking Oz. I already had the means to take care of my drinking problem all along. It was in here, inside of me. I already possessed the things I needed to overcome my addictive problems. It was here inside of me. To sound, like a corny fucking Hallmark movie. But I was so convinced that I was irreparably damaged, that I was so irreparably broken, that there was no way out for me, that I was hanging on to everything that the cult was telling me. And even though I later came to the conclusion it was all bullshit, by then I had no other coping mechanisms to get around the drinking, had no coping mechanisms to get around the relapses that were getting worse and worse and worse, and landed me in jail and all that other terrible shit that was going on at that time. And of course I could keep on with the horror stories that befell me before at the end, people were literally gleefully telling me, you're just going to be one of the ones that has to die so that others can live. You think you're fucking smart, but you're not. You're worthless and all that other shit. That, I believe, is one of the key components to how AA sucks people in. Whether you get there by a psychiatrist telling you need to go there, or whether you get there by a court order and decide to hang around, or whether you get there, whatever reason brings you there, the rehab industry or whatever it is. I think that's how it gets its grip into you, where you're terrified to leave, where you know it's bullshit, but you don't know what else to do. There was a point right before I finally gathered up the courage to walk away from it forever, that I was literally saying, yeah, this is all bullshit, this is all a lie, all these people in here are fucking phony, but I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. What can I do what can I do? And it's really funny, since walking away from the religious cult, I haven't had a drinking problem. When I walked away from the religious cult of AA, and I said, I'm probably going to die drunk. I'm probably going to drink myself to death. I might as well get started on drinking myself to death. I had no clue that right there was actually the perfect place to be, because I realized it was entirely up to me on who was going to stop drinking. It was entirely up to me on who was going to take the steps to, and not steps like their fucking steps, but it was entirely me that was going to take the actions that I needed to stop drinking, which, by the way, it didn't take 12 freaking steps. It took just don't go to a liquor store, even though you're miserable not going, until you get to a place where you're not miserable skipping out on a liquor store. It was me all along that kept myself dry during the dry periods in AA. They talk about dry versus sobriety, which is another made up term that has no basis in reality or fact whatsoever. I mean, for the people that talk about being dry, think about this. I've never had a doctor tell me, you know, you're so dry that your liver is going to go into failure if you keep staying dry off of booze. You know, you're so dry that your heart could take a beating from being so dry. I've never had a cop tell me, you know, you're not drinking and driving. That's a crime for being dry. You're not really sober. You're dry. You're dry not drinking and driving. I've never had any of that shit happen as a result of being dry. The whole sobriety thing versus dry is another made-up thing by the cult religion to keep you hooked. It's all about keeping you fearful, uncertain of your position, off your feet, and turning to them for answers that they don't even have. I talked 20 minutes here. I didn't expect. I'll be honest, I had no idea where this video was going when I got started. If you got anything out of that, or if you felt like that's kind of how they got you, chime in down in the comments below. Let me know. If you didn't get anything out of that, well, I don't care what you do. If you didn't get anything out of that, you don't have to watch. You know, you can unsubscribe maybe. I don't know. Anyway, until next time, chime in on the comments. Let me know what you think. How do you think that AA got you? Did they get you because you were just so desperate for a solution to your problem that you were just willing to believe anything? Did they get you through another method? Maybe you knew somebody that was in there, and maybe your family pressured you into staying in there, even though you had reservations from the very start. I mean, chime in. Let's get a discussion going next time.